Hi, my name is Nicole Faye Golden, and I'm the host of Scar Stories podcast. We all walk through seasons of brokenness, and it's so easy to buy into the lies that we're alone, forgotten, weak, and too far gone. But here's what I want you to know. We all have scars, and so we all have stories. I'm really hoping these interviews resonate with you and that you walk away knowing that you aren't alone, you're never forgotten, you are strong enough, and there are always second chances. Thanks so much for tuning in, and welcome to Scar Stories. Hey everybody, welcome back to Scar Stories. My name is Nicole Golden. I am your host, and I am here with a new friend, Jenna. I connected with her through another friend that I follow on Instagram, and I am so excited about the conversation we're going to have today. I'm going to go ahead and let you guys know ahead of time what it is, and you'll see it in the comments and everything. But I like to give people trigger warnings ahead of time, just in case you aren't in the right headspace. You can listen to this with a buddy or a friend. But we're going to talk about addiction today. And my brother was addicted to opioids, so this is something that's really near and dear to my heart. We probably will mention suicide at different times. So I just want to make sure that you guys are in a safe place before you tune in and listen. Also, full disclosure, it is storming right now when we are recording this. I'm in Tampa. Jenna, where are you? Are you in West Virginia or where are you?
I'm in Virginia.
Okay.
So I'm in Virginia right now, and it is, I don't want to rub it in your face, but it's nice out right now.
It's gorgeous. All right. I understand. Listen, I'm a little tired today, so I welcome the cloudy days because it tends to slow my kids down too a little bit. So I'm like, we're all right. But thank you so much for joining us, Jenna. I am so excited about this conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I was honored when you asked me to come on. So thank you so much.
And we're going to share all of her social handles and everything. She's got quite a following. I love how you refer to yourself, your sober bestie. And she does a lot with makeup tutorials, but then also ties a lot of that into being sober and really how to face an addiction. You put up a post the other day that was moving about, I think it was when you were in 2016, you were in a friend's wedding. And you got so many views on it because I think it's so funny with social media. I think a lot of times in our brains, we think it needs to be super curated, but the posts that get the most attraction are the ones where we're most honest. And you talked about in 2016 where you were at a bachelorette party and you basically drank yourself unconscious.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about that post. And then we're going to kind of backtrack and talk about your story. But tell me a little bit, talk to us a little bit about the post for people who maybe didn't see it.
So it was a reel that when I heard the soundbite, because that's what I like to do, I like to listen to sound bites and then think about what would resonate with me. And what's the irony of it is I included pictures from that actual day, from that time. And in the moment in March of 2016, after that day happened, I was mortified. I wanted to erase any memory of being at a bachelorette party. I didn't want to think about that day because it was so humiliating for me to know that on my best friend's, like one of her special times in her life that I planned the whole thing, I had made it all about me. I had drank too much to the point where I couldn't walk. And these women that I loved and cared about had to put me in a wheelchair and take me up to the hotel room. And instead of it being about my friend for the day, it became all about me. And I ended up reaching out to people that were at the bachelorette party. Like I said, do you have this picture of me? Because I remembered the next morning, everybody was laughing. They're all like, look what you did last night. Like we was so crazy. And I'm like, I just don't want to remember this. I can't even believe I did this. I'm so mortified. So after digging around, I had a couple people actually have the photos and they sent them to me. And just looking back and realizing that in that moment, I still love the woman that I was, because without her, I wouldn't be where I am and who I am today.
Yeah.
She still is a part of me, and I appreciate the things that she was strong, even though she had her weaknesses. And without her experiences and all of the things that I've done in my life, that even though some of them were terrible and a lot of them were rock bottoms, I still appreciate them, because I wouldn't be who I am today. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't be talking to you
Yeah.
today, even on this podcast.
Yeah. I think that's so huge in people's healing journeys, because I've had to really go back and love the person I was before I had gotten a lot of my diagnoses. Because sometimes when you start to get healthy, you look back at the person that you were and you're like, dang, like, why didn't I have more of a backbone? Or why
Mhm.
didn't I stand up? Or why didn't I go after those things back then? But then you have
Mhm.
to almost realize, like, addiction, mental illness, a lot of those things are developed outside of trauma. And you in
Mhm.
that moment are doing the best you can with what you have and what you know
Mhm.
in that moment.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important, like you said, to celebrate that
Yeah.
and not to crucify or shame that person, but to say they did the best with what they had. Now I have
Mhm.
new resources,
Mhm.
so I can do better now, but I want to celebrate what kept me alive and got me to this moment.
Mhm.
So I watched a little bit of your story that you had sent me, and you originally got into therapy for other people's addiction. You wanted to help
Mhm.
other people with their addiction.
Yeah.
And while you're in therapy, you have this aha moment that
Mhm.
actually you are addicted.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about that aha moment, what that must have been like for you.
Yeah, I mean, well, I was on such a high horse. I always look at it as the irony. Like, I'm gonna save everybody in my family, because um it's not that everybody in my family was addicted to something, but there's a long lineage of addiction in my
Yeah.
family. And I wanted to go and help everybody out. I was going to find all these resources. And so, and it was probably around April or May of 2017, I decided to go. And my therapist, it was the first time I met her. And
Your very first session.
my very first session, she asked me, "How much do you drink
And how did she know to
yourself?"
ask that?
If I would show you pictures in the moment, obviously, I didn't think that I looked unhealthy, and no one else around me thought that I looked unhealthy, because that's the way that I looked, and they saw
Yeah.
me every day of my life. But now, when I look back at those pictures, I can see I looked weathered, I looked tired, I looked
Okay.
bloated. Um, I did not look happy. You
Yeah.
could see it all over my face.
Yeah.
And so she asked me flat out, and I thought, for the first time in my life, I'm going to tell the truth.
Mm,
Because prior to that, if I would go to the doctor, even just to my primary care physician as a checkup, and they ask you, do you drink? I would say, yeah, I drink a couple of drinks on the weekends. Like, I would never tell the truth
yeah.
of what I was really doing. Do
Yeah.
you smoke? No, I don't smoke, even though I was smoking every single time that I drank.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, I'm drinking like about like 1 to 2 bottles of wine, like 3 to 4 nights a week. And she was so taken back. She was
Mm,
so shocked.
mm.
And she said, you're so small, because I'm only 5'2".
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And she said, that's a lot for you. And that was the first time that I had said it out loud, and someone outside of my family had said, this is a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had to digest it. But then immediately after leaving therapy, I got on my phone and I Googled. I was looking for some type of validation for what I was doing. And I
Yeah.
was Googling, is it normal to drink 1 bottle of wine a night? Is it normal to drink 2 bottles of wine a night? And I will tell you, you will find that validation.
Yeah. I'm sure.
You will find people that will validate that behavior. And that was, even though there was like 99 other articles out there that would give you the like actual bad things that can happen to you if you continue down that path.
Yeah.
If I could find 3 people on Reddit that were like,
I
yeah,
love Reddit.
girl,
Yeah.
yeah, do it.
Oh.
And so it took me a while. It was me like, because it wasn't like, oh, I heard that and I was like, oh, cured.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. It was a lot of stumbling and falling and failing and waking up on bathroom floors and thinking, why do I keep doing this to
Mm,
myself? Because as much as an addict and as an alcoholic, as much as you want to quit something, it doesn't matter, because your brain and your body becomes addicted not only to the substance, but also to the habits that you develop around the
Mm,
substances.
mm. Yes, that's huge. And that was something you and I were chatting about before we started the interview,
Mhm.
was just about how I think people don't understand how addictions really do rewire your brain.
Mhm.
And that was something that I was learning when my brother was addicted to opioids, was that, he was a very fragmented individual because of the rewiring that was going on. So there was sober Eric, and I could hear it in his voice when he was
Mhm.
sober. And then there was agitated, angry, sad on the pills, Eric. And then there was super high flying, also on the pills, Eric.
Mhm.
And so he was trying to put his life together, but it was so fragmented as a result of the rewiring that this addiction does. And I think you're exactly right. Like, there's other habits that the addiction creates. So
Mhm.
you're not just quitting alcohol, you're not just quitting pills, you're not just quitting whatever it is.
No.
There's this whole slew of other things you've got to quit.
There's a whole process to, I feel like no matter what your addiction is, you have habits that you form around that addiction. And for me, it was Friday after work, driving straight to Harris Teeter down the street,
Mm,
getting 2 bottles of wine and a pack of cigarettes that I was going to have for the night, going on the back porch. And it was like every weekend was Groundhog's Day
mm,
from Friday until Monday.
mm.
And breaking that addiction of even just stopping at the store, or
Yeah.
stopping at the store if I really needed to, but not going to the wine aisle and
Yeah.
getting what I would normally get. And so you're right. There's so many other things that you develop, like aside from using a drug or drinking alcohol or
Yeah.
whatever other addiction that you have, because there's so many out there.
And I think too, a big part of even unearthing an addiction is figuring out why it was created in the first place.
Hmm.
What were you trying to, because to me, addictions would are escape routes. They're
Hmm.
ways to escape the present reality that you're in. Do you want to talk a little bit? And I gave Jenna complete like
Yeah.
ability to say she doesn't want to talk about certain things, but do you want to
Yeah.
talk maybe even what you were trying to escape
Yeah.
with the alcohol? Like, what was that thing that you were trying to basically numb yourself from?
Yeah. I think that, with addiction, and I always like to throw this out there, because I'm not an expert. I can only speak from my own
Mm,
experience. So I don't want anybody to get the sense of that I'm like a psychologist or like a therapist. I just speak from my own experience on addiction, and hopes to inspire or to make somebody else think differently,
yes.
maybe their habits and the way that they're living, and give hope.
Yes.
Um, and so whenever I think about addiction, you can have genetics play a big part of it, and then
Mm,
your environment as well.
mm,
And so with me, I feel like there was a perfect storm. I remember
mm.
in therapy talking to my therapist, and she said, um, there was like a less than a 1% chance that you would have made it like to this far without having an addiction, because addiction, I runs deep in my family.
Mm,
And my dad is he's sober now, which is
mm,
like a grace from God, because he suffered really throughout my life with alcoholism, and I watched that. And
mm.
even though I would say over and over and over again, I'll never be that. I'll
Mm.
never be this person. I will never do that. I will never be who you are. And I didn't drink, ironically, until I was in college, because I hated alcohol and what it had done to my family.
Mm.
Um, I still ended up to be that person
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it was the environment that I was in. It was the coping mechanism that I had.
yeah.
And then
Well, you were most
genetically,
familiar with it,
yeah.
Yeah, you were most familiar with it.
So it wasn't only even about numbing. It was the only tool that I had in my tool chest. So
Yeah,
anytime I was sad, angry, stressed, it was like, well, I'll just pour wine. I'll just
yeah,
drink wine. I'll just drink to get rid of it. And then even if I was happy, it was like birthdays, like any holiday that you can think of, any reason that I could find, I was drinking. And it would definitely go back to my relationship with my dad. And now that we're in such a good place, I'm so thankful. If you would have told me 5 years ago that this is where my life would be, that I would be talking to you on this podcast and talking about my sobriety and my dad's sobriety, I would have told you never in a million years.
Yeah.
Never in a million years. But
I love that.
Yeah.
It's wild. And I think too, one of the things I've been thinking a lot about, because I follow like a lot of funny mom meme things, because with 4 kids, 8 and under. And it's so funny because I'll repost a lot of them. And so many of them have to do with wine or drinking wine or this. And there are times where I'm posting these, and actually, since I've started, connecting with you, the thought has crossed my mind, like, dang, there's so many jokes about it. There's so many, you're exactly right. People do it at every event, like every birthday party, every family gathering, every alcohol is so widely accepted. And I think, and I'm not, for some people, it's totally fine. And then for others, it's just not. But I almost feel like we have, and this isn't like a podcast or an episode on like, oh, I can't even think of the word right now, but in the 20s when they got rid of all the alcohol, like that is not what I'm saying. But a suffragette, yes, I'm not a suffragette. But what I want people to understand though is that I do feel like our culture has really minimized the numbing and addictive qualities of alcohol, and we've almost laughed it off like it's no big deal. And we've made it so accessible where I do wonder how many people are actually walking around addicted to alcoholics and not even realizing it, not even realizing what they're numbing, not even realizing what they're hiding from, because it's just become so widely accepted as, oh, this is just what we do as Americans at every fun event,
It's like white noise. And I didn't realize either until I was in recovery. Like until something was off limits to me and I actually healed and was stable in my recovery. I mean, it's in our music, it's on TV, it's in commercials, it's almost everywhere. And you don't realize how obsessed our culture is with alcohol until you really start to pay attention. And I agree. There's so many bad things that happen to people whenever they're drunk that we really don't talk enough about. I mean, people make terrible decisions that they would never make sober, whether it's drinking and driving or like cheating on their spouse or like these things that happen that they can be life-altering events. And we don't talk enough about it if we weren't overindulging so much as a culture and it wasn't so normalized from the beginning. It's like as soon as you go to college, binge drinking is normalized then. It is 100% okay, acceptable. Go drink until you pass out. Take 40s onto your hands and drink. Take shots. Like do these things to where you are losing consciousness, which when you do black out from drinking alcohol, you are essentially deleting brain cells from your mind. And just globally, even I was reading an article the other day. My friend has a page, it's Reaction Recovery, and he actually has an opioid podcast.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. But he had shared on his Instagram story that the WHO is releasing different guidelines, and 3.2 million people a year globally die from some alcohol related, which is so staggering.
Yeah. And you're exactly right. We don't talk about that because alcohol has become kind of the accepted drug of choice. It's the thing that we just allow people to do. But you said something, you said overindulgence. And I think, I have people from all different countries listening to this. I can't speak to other countries, but I can speak to Americans because I'm American. I'm living here, and we overindulge in everything. Food, sex, alcohol, everything. And I think it speaks to the depth of pain that so many people are walking through. Shopping, Amazon. I put up the memes too about that, about, my husband and I play a game. How many that do I remember everything I got sent from Amazon? For me personally, with borderline personality disorder, addiction is something a lot of people with BPD struggle with. Thankfully, I did not go down that road. I think that's why mentally I overcompensated, which I think mentally is why there's been so much I've had to work through because of that. But I remember my therapist saying to me one time, like, you are lucky you're not a sex and drug addict homeless on the side of the road because of how bad you've had to wrestle through some things. And I see now as a healthy adult, how my addiction can go towards shopping or other things, you know what I'm saying? But I just think we don't talk enough about these things to say to people, we can't keep laughing and normalizing a lot of this because it's killing people. 3.2 million people a year. It's killing people.
Yeah.
It's wild.
It's amazing that you're able to, when you were saying that your therapist said that you could be addicted to drugs, to sex, to these things, and you said it was hard working through those things. I think it's important to note too, and I don't remember where I heard this, but I've heard it so many times. It's like you choose your hard. Like you had the ability to go to therapy and work through the hard things, because it's not easy. It's not easy to go and be honest and real and raw and work through hard things. Or the flip side is you could live with an addiction, and they're both hard things to do, but going to therapy and working through it gives you a better quality of life, and you're healthy, and you get to be present with your family and all of the goodness.
Yes, 100%. And you just mentioned family. I wanted to talk to this a little bit. How long have you been married?
I've been married, let's see, in July, it'll be 9 months.
9 months. Okay. I love that. And then
brand new.
How long have you guys been together?
10 years.
Okay, girl, there it is. All right. So 10 years. Because I was like, I know you've been together longer than 9 months.
Yeah, we've been together a while.
10 years. So talk to me. What now? Would he be comfortable if we said his name, or should we just refer to? Okay. What's his name?
His name is Phil.
Phil. Okay. So tell me a little bit about Phil's role in you getting sober and healthy. Did Phil know there was an issue?
Yeah.
And then when you came home and you're like, hey, my therapist said this, was Phil like, yeah, and then what role did he play in all of this?
I love him. So thank you for asking about him. I always like to give him shout outs whenever he's so much more shy. Like I'm always like, if I don't show him for a while on my social media, people will message me like, is he okay? Like, where's Phil?
Are you guys still together? Yeah.
He's still here.
Yeah.
So I think that with our relationship, what's interesting is when I was in active addiction, Phil was drinking a lot more than Phil ever normally would, because that was my hobby. That was my fun thing to do. So to spend time with me and to hang out, he would participate in that with me.
Yeah.
He does not have an addiction. He's the unicorn of people that we could go to dinner tonight and he can have one beer and come home and be fine. Where with me, I would be stopping at the liquor store on the way home to pick up more to drink completely by myself. So he, in the moment, that's all that he knew me as. We met in a bar. I was a bartender. He was my bar back. And this was just regular. This was just normal to him.
Yeah.
Were we good? No, we weren't good. We would fight. I would pick fights when I was drunk. I would do things to embarrass him, to embarrass me. And I remember always people asking, like, oh my gosh, you guys have been together for 7 years. You guys have been together for 8 years. Why aren't you engaged yet? Like, he better put a ring on it. And I would totally buy in. Like, I was like, I know, like, what is he waiting on?
Yeah.
I would, am I not special enough? And now looking back, I realized I wasn't ready. Like, we weren't ready. We weren't in the space of I wasn't healthy. Our relationship wasn't healthy, and it wasn't the right time for us to do something like that. And
Yeah.
so once I got out of therapy, out of that therapy session, I knew, but I had never mentioned anything really to him. Was working through these things. I was journaling. I talked to one friend about it a lot on Marco Polo, the app. I don't know if you've ever heard of Marco
I
Polo,
have
but
heard of it. Yeah, I actually have. Yeah.
and it came down to so I got sober on November 4th, 2017.
Okay.
And on that morning, I ran a 5K, which is crazy. Like, I used to do that stuff all the time. Like, I look back, I ran a half marathon in Philly, so hungover. You could see it on my face was so swollen.
It's like
It
your
looked like it
body
was gonna
just was
pop.
like, well, here we go.
Yeah, my body was like, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
So after I came back from the 5K, I came back to him and I said, listen, I need you to hold me accountable. I can't do this without you. I had tried so many times before.
Yeah.
And he loved me. And he would think that the times before, if I would say I want to drink, I love her. I want to make her happy. I
Yeah.
don't want her to be upset. I don't want her to be sad. And this time I was really serious. I said, if I want to drink, I need you to tell me no. I need you to say no.
Yeah.
And I remember it was like 2 months after I'd been sober for 2 months, and I came home from work one day and I said, I want a drink right now. I want to get wine right now. And he was like, absolutely not. Sit on the couch. Don't move. I'll be right back. He went and got sushi from my favorite sushi restaurant.
Oh,
And he got me sparkling cider, and we watched TV on the couch. And then that became our new tradition.
I love
So
that.
instead of Fridays, me going to Harris Teeter and picking up 2 bottles of wine and a pack of cigarettes, Fridays were sushi. And I don't know if you remember the TV show Live PDE, but that was
Yeah.
like our TV show to watch. It's so exhilarating just watching, like, because you're like, oh my gosh, you're like on an actual live police chase.
I love how I feel like reality TV also has become like our new, but that's a different conversation. We'll let that one go though. We'll let that one go. Oh my gosh.
So yeah, he supported me, and I had to be honest with him. Again, it comes down to being open and honest and communicating. I had to let him know what I needed during that time.
Yes, that is
And
huge. We'll come back to that, but yeah.
And without him being here with me, because we don't have family here in Virginia, so I couldn't have done it without him, because he was sober when I was sober. Until I felt comfortable with him drinking, then he started, like, if we went out places and we went to like a social event, he would have a cocktail. But he stayed sober with me, and he helped like introduce new healthy habits and these things. And that was crucial, because before I couldn't trust myself, because I was sick and I was working through things. But once I left a therapy office, it's not like I had, my therapist was with me at all times to say, no, don't do that. Like, you can't go here, you can't go there. So I needed to have the accountability outside of that to know, the first person that I'm going to let myself down is me. And that's who I don't want to let down the most, because everything that I do, I look at in my life, I want to be the best mother that I can to my future children. And I have so much out of my control with my kids.
Yeah.
But I want to be able to control everything that's within my control.
Yeah.
Protect them.
Yeah.
And not pass the torch of addiction on to someone else.
Yes.
But second, I wouldn't want to disappoint my husband. Like, I'm making a promise, and I like, the thing is like, we avoid shame a lot in our culture. Like, we don't shame, but I needed to know, I don't want to feel the shame of doing it. Even though if I did feel the shame, I dust myself off, I get back up, and I do it again. I did that multiple times in my recovery.
And how did he respond? Because I think that's huge. With my brother, he felt a lot of shame from different people in his family when he would fail with the opioids. And, that was one of the last things he said right before he committed suicide was he didn't want to keep bringing shame on the family. And I think there is something different. I think there's a balance between, like you said, like owning, okay, this is bringing shame. But I think it's different between you owning that and then your husband putting that on you. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, because I'm sure there were times when he's human. He probably got frustrated and said things, but I think the majority of it was you just owning, okay, this is shameful.
Yeah.
But how, like, were there times when you guys would fight about it, when you would get upset at him for not allowing you to get a bottle of wine?
I think more before, because I had not before. So I'm 6 years young or older than my husband. That should
Okay.
be said too.
Okay,
because
girl. We see you. All right. Okay.
And so I have been like kind of like not leading, but I have been the mature one, the older one in our
Sure.
relationship. I don't know if he would have ever said, "Hey, stop doing that. Like quit doing that." What would happen is I would get really drunk and say like mean, terrible things. And then he would say, "I don't know why you do this to me, why you keep doing this to me." And that would rightfully so make me feel shameful, because why would I do something like that to somebody that I loved? But I agree. And I can speak from like a family member's perspective, is shaming it doesn't work when you're trying to help someone, because what they need is love, and they need support, and they need to know that they have people around them that care about them. Because in moments when I know I felt my absolute worst and I was at my rock bottom moments, if I didn't have my husband and my parents there to like make me feel safe and know that I was going to be okay, that I was going to rise above this, then I wouldn't have had hope for continuing on, because I had gotten myself into a lot of really terrible moments where I was in deep, deep, deep trouble.
Yeah. And I do think, I remember, so my brother he got addicted to opioids because he got shingles, and then it relapsed, and they prescribed I think hydrocodone is what was his kind of gateway drug. And then kind of what triggered everything was he was on him, he kept getting renewed, and then they had 2 dogs, and one of the dogs had gotten hit by a car, survived, but needed to be on pain medications for a body part. I can't remember which one. And so he went to 3 different veterinarian clinics and actually got tramadol, painkillers for the dog, but then took it for himself. But he got so many that these 3 veterinarian clinics kind of got tipped off and started talking to each other and then reported it. And in the meantime, ended up with kidney cancer. And I don't know how much of it's related. He and I are going to have a lot of conversations when I get to heaven, because there are a lot of different stories floating around about different things related to him. But I do remember, when he was in rehab, he did rehab for 21 days. Judge ordered rehab for 21 days. And it was the best thing for him. He was the most sober in him I had heard him in years. And I remember just knowing he was going to need more rehab, because as soon as he got done with rehab, he was going to get his kidney removed, and they were going to have to put him on morphine and all this other stuff. And I really wanted him to come out, get the surgery, and go back in again, but that didn't happen. And so quickly he went back to NyQuil and ZQuil and Benadryl and those, because he could get his hands on, and he was taking whole packets of these. And I remember just saying to him, like, do you think this is wise? And he just said to me, Cole, I'm in so much pain and I cannot sleep. And I don't think it was just physical pain. I think there was the emotional pain of he was thrust back into reality way too soon. And I know you've done different reels about this, and I love it. You talk about how everybody's journey with addiction is different. So some people need to get into rehab. Some people do therapy. Some people do all different things. But I think what I would love to hear you just kind of employ our listeners, because I know there are going to be different people that are listening to this that I know are in the middle of an addiction right now, but are scared to get help because of financially the cost, because of the cost on their reputation and their image and everything else. And I just think, we went into debt our first few years of marriage to pay for counseling and therapy,
Mhm.
but it's what saved us. We're 10
Yeah.
years in, we're not in debt anymore due to therapy and counseling and stuff. So plead with people maybe, and maybe someone who was where you were at, just say like the importance of throw the money thing aside, throw the reputation thing aside, throw
Mhm.
all of that aside, get the help you need. Or if you're a family member, if you're a parent or something, get rid of the dollar signs, get rid of those
Yeah.
things, get the help you need.
Yeah. Um, I totally agree. I think the number one question that comes in on my social media is, first is, how did you know that you had a problem?
Mm,
And the next question is, what are the steps that you took? And without therapy saved me.
mm,
Therapy saved my life. And without professional help, it's going to be a rockier road. It's already like in recovery. It's never easy, and everybody's journey looks totally different. Some people go to AA, they find extreme value in AA.
yeah.
Some people go to rehab. Some people go to therapy. Some people need rehab. It depends on your addiction.
Yeah.
With opioids, it's a hard addiction.
Mm,
It's a hard addiction to fight. And not doing apples to apples, but I would, with my alcohol addiction, even though it was still an addiction, it was something that was ingrained in me. I'm sure there are people that are on opioids that have it a lot harder. It locks you
mm,
in. You hear so many things that, like, with heroin, it's like you try it one time and then you're hooked
yeah.
on it.
Yeah.
Um, I think as a society, if we can normalize talking about this more and more, and the more people that become okay and talking about it, mental health in general, like you said, with you and your husband going to counseling, it's almost everybody could benefit from therapy. Like,
Yes.
I swear,
Yes.
like, going to
Yes.
therapy, it is like, sometimes I'll be talking to my therapist and then I will talk to her about something, and then she just says something so matter of fact, that's
I
so logical, that I'm like, how didn't I think about it in
yes.
this way?
No, and don't you feel like so dumb? Like you're like, oh my
Like,
gosh, like
how
I'm
did
an
I not
idiot.
even think
Yeah,
about it
yeah.
that way? And you do two things: is you not only, you're helping yourself, but you're helping everyone around you,
Oh,
because
yes,
you're
preach.
becoming a better friend, a better mother, a better sister, a better wife. Um, and you are taking that, and you're also leading by a good example,
Mm, yes.
because so many, not only people that have addictions, but parents or loved ones of people that have addictions will reach out and they'll say, what advice would you give to a loved one that is suffering, has someone suffering from addiction? And my number one answer is, I know it sounds so selfish. It sounds so selfish, but help yourself, because
Yes.
people can get entangled in this web of where they become addicted to the chaos of the addiction.
Come on.
And until you can understand that, and until you can find the way that figure out the way that your loved one's brain is working, and why,
Mm,
what's happening, and what's helpful and what's not helpful in
damn.
situations,
Yeah.
and how it's harming you, and
Yes.
how you can live a fulfilled life, then you're not going to be helping someone. Just like we talked about before, when
Mm,
I was in active addiction and I wrecked my truck and I almost killed myself in it and I lost my job, the only tool I had in the time in my toolbox was alcohol. So
yeah.
that's what I lean back on. When you are not familiar with addiction and you have a loved one that is suffering, but you have no way to help, and then you're just going in blindly, the best way to help is to really dive in and to help
Yes.
yourself, and to figure out what really the best way is to help someone and help yourself. And that
Yes.
It's
Oh,
really good.
I mean, that was gold. I mean, that was, you said they get addicted to the chaos of the addiction. I think it is so crazy because I think that was happening to me with my brother
Mhm.
and just wanting to keep him safe.
Yeah.
I was answering every phone call every hour of the night. And, and he would do a lot of the same things. He'd get so angry and then just unleash on me,
Mhm.
and if I didn't enter into that anger with him, if I tried to stay calm, there would be more anger and more
Mhm.
anger. And I just remember going to therapy one day and just being like, I'm exhausted. Like, I
Yeah.
have nothing to give to my husband, my kids, nothing.
Mhm.
And Kevin and I, my therapist, us talking about, okay, I've got to put up some boundaries.
Mhm.
And I remember feeling so selfish about that, and I remember even saying to Kevin, what if I set up these boundaries and he commits suicide? I literally asked that. And Kevin's like, what happens if that, so let's answer that question. And he looked at me in the eyes and he said, will it be your fault? And I said, no. And he said, we need to remember that. It was so weird. It gives me chills now, but I
Yeah.
just, I had a conversation, another Scar Stories podcast with Dina Yoy. I don't know if you've heard of the organization To Write Love on Her Arms with Jamie Twarkowski.
I haven't.
Okay, they're based out of Orlando. They're a
Mhm.
huge organization with mental health, addiction. They've done a lot this past month with mental health in the LGBTQ community, which I've loved.
So good.
But Dina Yoy's daughter, Renee, was the reason why that whole organization got started. And I interviewed Dina Yoy, just talking about a parent from a perspective of a parent with a child with mental illness.
Mhm.
And Renee was addicted. She was suicidal. She was depressed. Oh, the whole 9 yards, self-harm, everything. And Dina said one day she sat down with Renee and said, what do you need from me in order to help you get healthy? What do you need from me? And she had like a pen and piece of paper. She was ready for Renee to tell her all these different things that she needed to do differently and everything. And Renee looked at her and said, I need you to get help. Like, I need you to get healthy because I'm blaming myself for what I'm putting you through. And every time you spiral, I spiral. So if I don't have to worry about you anymore, I'll focus on myself, which is so weird. It was almost
Yeah.
like reversed,
Yeah.
And so I tell a lot of people the same thing. If you are walking through a situation with a loved one where they are spiraling, whether it's addiction, it's mental health, whatever it is, you've got to get help.
Yeah.
Because if you're not healthy, it's like a lifeguard who has a broken leg. A
Mhm.
lifeguard with a broken leg cannot be rescuing someone
Mhm.
who's drowning,
Yeah. It's so
And so,
good.
yeah. And I do think there's something I remember after Eric died, this letdown of like, okay, there is no more drama. There is no more. And so you saying that was just kind of like a light bulb went off in my head. I think there was a time where I was addicted to the chaos, like
Yeah.
almost got highs from entering into his.
It's like this. I know just from experiences I've had with loved ones, it's this rush of adrenaline that
Yes.
almost your body gets into, that you almost get like when the phone rings and it's late at night and like you answer it, then your adrenaline goes up and you're so on high alert. You're so emotionally hijacked in those moments. Coming back down is so hard.
Yeah.
And then you're right, we have a finite amount of energy, and so that drains those moments of like super low lows for someone that is loving someone that's addicted. It's hard. And it's not to say that, I see from that point of view, and I empathize so hard with that point of view, because it is hard loving someone that is addicted to anything, because it
Yeah.
might seem like they're putting everything else before, or putting the addiction before everything else in their life, but
Yeah.
they're not. It's a disease. It's a disease. And trust me, like I was talking about me in the therapy session, if I could have just been like, I'm addicted, yes, like
Yeah.
I'm an alcoholic, cured, it's such a longer process than
Yeah.
that, and it takes so much work.
Yeah. So let's end it with this, Jenna. What, once you figured out, okay, I am an alcoholic, and you said you got sober November 4th, 2017. What were some conversations you had to have with those closest to you to be like, hey, I need these safeguards put into place?
Mm-hmm.
And did you have to have conversations where it was almost like, hey, for right now, like, I can't have you drink around me. I can't have
Mhm.
this. I can't have that. What were some boundaries that you had to set up around yourself to really put safety around your sobriety?
Um, with my husband, my best friend that lived in Michigan that I was on Marco Polo with, and my mom, I had them all hold me accountable. So I said, if I'm going to drink, I'm going to call you and I'm going to tell you I want to drink. I need you to say, no, this isn't happening. I need you to say, absolutely not. Like, let's get something else in place right now. And for the people that were closer, that were around me, I know some of my friends that I told in the moment, they, as I said before, I didn't look right like I
Yeah.
had an addiction to
Yeah.
people. So a lot of people were taken back whenever I was like, I'm not going to be drinking. And they're like, everybody drinks like that. Everybody's drinking that way. So why don't you, like, don't feel like you can't drink just because of yada, yada, yada. And I know they were not meaning harm by
Mm,
doing that. I know that they were only trying to make me feel better.
yeah.
But I knew in my heart of hearts, my gut was telling me that I needed to stay sober. So we stayed away from, there were so many watering holes that we went to around here that we honestly haven't been back to since, which is
Yeah.
crazy because you shift your habits and then you shift your environment, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I love that. Shift your habits, shift your environment. That's good. You need to market
yeah.
that. Write that down. Put that out there somewhere.
Put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, that's so good.
But it's so true because even with the places that we were going to, parks and everything changed because I was starting to experience life instead of hanging out in just
Mm,
bars and on my back porch.
mm.
We were going out and we were doing things together.
You weren't just surviving, you were thriving. Yeah.
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 And being present and in the moment. And I worked at the time in corporate sales. And it was a very much, like, yeah, like rah, 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 drink the Kool-Aid kind of had to.
Yeah.
And when we did these quarterly meetings where you would discuss your goals, not only professionally, but personally, your goals. And it was when I was 6 months sober, but I remember every single person in that room. And I love every single person in that room because it was on my heart. I
Mm,
wanted to share with them that I was 6 months sober.
yeah.
And my boss, who's still a really good friend of mine, Kelly Lindemuth, shout out Kelly. She was sitting next to me and I was choking on my words. I remember I couldn't get it out. I was
Yeah.
crying and I paused for a moment and I looked at her and I said, this is important. I need to say it. And I said, I was struggling with alcohol addiction, but I'm 6 months sober. And we were all crying. And even in that moment, it was a small group of people, maybe 8 people in that room. After I told that story and everybody hugged me, almost every person went around the room and talked about how alcoholism had touched their life in some way, whether it be an uncle or a cousin or a friend or somebody. And that was even more push for me to start openly talking about it on social media, because at that time there wasn't a lot of people that were talking about it. And even though it's grown so much, there's so many amazing accounts in the sober community now that are a wealth of knowledge. There still, I think the more and more that come out and the more that we're able to normalize this, it's just going to help so many people.
I had to mute myself for a second because my son's in the back room and he's going a little nuts. I don't know if you could hear him. My
No, I
husband's on
can't
his
hear.
way up to get him. Okay, good. So I was listening and I was like responding, and then I was like, I'm on mute, so she can't hear me. But gosh, I love that. I think it's yeah, I think as we share our stories, and that's why I wanted to even start this podcast, like our scars become our stories. And, I believe that we have a voice for a reason, and we're given this voice to redeem and rescue other people. And I don't personally think I can redeem anyone, but I can rescue someone. I can say, hey, here's the buoy. And,
Mhm.
but then I think there is a point, and you've talked about this a lot, where you have to make the decision. Like, am I going to grab
Yeah.
a hold of it? Am I
Mhm.
going to go after the help or am I not? And so Jenna, I want to thank you for sharing your story, for being so honest. I hope you guys follow her on social media. I'm going to drop all of her handles here with all of the podcasts.
Yeah.
She's
Thank you
so
so
fun.
much.
You're
Thank
such a light.
you.
Um, and she'll give you other resources there too. And then I'll put some other resources in case you or a loved one are walking through an addiction with someone. But Jenna, what's maybe a thought that you just want to leave with our listeners, whether they're walking through addiction, in relationship with someone? Is there something just a last minute, like, hey, I just want them to know this?
I would say what my biggest message on my page, because my biggest fear in living a life sober was I will never have fun ever again. And I believe that wholeheartedly to my core, that I will never be able to have fun because I had associated drinking alcohol with all of the fun, even though I wasn't really having any.
Yeah.
And I just want to let people know, especially with my page, that you can live a fulfilled life without substances. You can live a full and happy life and be yourself and laugh harder than you've ever had and love harder than you've ever had and build strong relationships with your loved ones, with your friends, with God, and really be authentically yourself without any substances.
I love that, because that is something people will be concerned about. That's so good. I didn't even think to ask that question. Well, Jenna, you are queen. We love you. Thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
having me.
You guys, make sure you check out all of her stuff and make sure you head over to NicoleGolden.org. I will link Jenna's Insta profile and everything to my resources so that you guys can find it very easily there as well. But so glad you guys joined us, and we will see you again next time on Scar Stories. Thank you so much for tuning in to Scar Stories podcast. We all need places where we can feel seen, be safe, find connection and resources. I would love to connect with you on social media at Nicole Faye Golden. I also have a website with a ton of resources and a free 7-day Praying Scared prayer journal at NicoleGolden.org. Thank you for tuning in. I'd love it if you shared this with your friends and if you left a rating and a comment. And I look forward to seeing you next time as we delve into mental health, parenting, family, and so many other issues with a lot of my friends. We'll see you soon.